Yeah. Let's see if I were to raise that up, doesn't do much. Okay.
Hello, Tom. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. I really
Sure.
appreciate it. I first discovered your work on Gaia a few years ago, actually, in an interview,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
and it
That's
really
been a while.
resonated with me. And I tend to, in my notes app, write books down that I want to read, and yours was one of them. And I kept it there for a while, and it was like the top of my list. And later last year, I ended up going back and revisiting it. I watched your interview again, and I read two of your books. And I went through them pretty quick, and I really kind of immersed myself in your world. And it was just like really eye opening for me. So I'd love to share some of your
Yeah.
points and your highlights and your journey with my audience. So if we could start from the very beginning and tell me, how did you kind of get into this work?
Oh, um, I'll skip the long, long, long ago stuff, which was kind of like astrological. So that I was kind of starting me on my path. But one day I was reading a channeled article in the uh, Sedona Journal of Emergence. Don't know how that shows up there. That's just one of the one of the issues. And there was a channeled article by Robert Shapiro that um, said um, you can request benevolent outcomes in your life. And I thought that was interesting because I tried um, the law of attraction. It didn't work very well. And I was still searching for something. And so I started kind of playing with it, experimenting with it. And and I just happened to be saying these requests out loud for just mundane things like, a parking spot in front of a mall or a grocery store or drives to the bank or just small things like that, mundane things to life. And it was all working perfect. Somebody would be pulling out of the parking space just as I got there. And and so slowly but surely, I started using it in my business. At that time, we owned a, a ski club, a single ski club, and then it became a ski club for everybody. When everybody kept getting married, I didn't want to lose my clients, so it it just worked, really amazingly well. And uh, then I my let's see, I'm trying to keep on the same level. My wife and I attended a seminar put on by Dick Sutphen, Sutphen, uh, in Sedona, Arizona, on increasing your um, psychic abilities. So I uh, had already been writing a couple of articles about uh, uh, benevolent outcomes in the Sedona Journal. And so when we went there, I'd even had a channeling by Robert Shapiro. And so the second day of the psychic seminar, Dick Suffin put us into a light trance in order for us to do automatic writing. And I decided instead to contact a shaman living in the 1600s that Robert Shapiro had channeled for me. And so I said, "Reveals the mysteries. Are you there?" And he said, "Yes, I am, Tom." And I said, "Wow, that's really great." And so uh, he said, "Tom," he said, "you've incarnated into this time period in order to reintroduce people to the gentle way." So the very first time I ever talked to him, he gave me the name of my first book. And he went on to say, "Tom," he said, "you're going to write books." And I said, "No, no, no." By this time, we had sold the tour business and had started, uh, international film distribution. And he said, no, books. And I said, well, okay. So I wrote the first book in about 90 or 100 days. But when I set up a website for it, I made the website www.thegentlewaybook.com because I never thought I'd write another book. And so here I am, today my publisher will be releasing my seventh and eighth books. We mutually decided to put it into a volume 1 and volume 2 because as one book, it was over 650 pages, which would be awfully daunting for a lot
That's
of people.
awesome. And I'm just going to ask you here, when you first started communicating and channeling, was it something that came naturally to you, or was it something that, a lot of people kind of question it? Was it something that was...
Well, I mean, I never even tried channeling before. So the fact that it came when I was put into a light, altered state by Dick Sutphin, just made all the difference in the world. And I've since found out that all you have to do is just a light breathing exercise. You do it at a time when you're not thinking about anything, any of what they call monkey stuff, of life. And so, I mean, I typically do these conversations in the middle of the night. The one that I did last Saturday was I got up at 2:15 and I got back to bed at 4:45. So when I am asking questions, I'll give you an example. And right now I'm working on this Saturday's, and it goes in and out. But you see, there's a couple of spaces left. But last week, I filled
Oh, wow.
it completely. Yeah, sorry,
Oh, no,
it's
I can
breaking
still
up.
see it.
But yeah, so you get an idea. People send me these questions from all over the world. I mean, uh, just received one the other day from Finland, uh, 13 questions from a lady that sends me lots of questions from Estonia. Just received about 8 or 10 questions from a gentleman in India, uh, and just literally Germany, you name it. So I've asked about, nobody else was doing it this way. Most of the time, most people that channel will bring in somebody and they will take over and a uh, give a class or give a talk. But I decided to open it up and take questions from anybody, and so I've asked over 30,000 questions in a light trance. And for beginners, I always suggest Dick Sutphin's Spirit Guide. So you can go to Amazon. Sutphin is spelled Sutphen, and Spirit Guides. And it's great for beginners because he safely takes you down, surrounds you in a bubble of white light. And then after he takes you down, he's quiet for 5 or 10 minutes. I don't know the time because I've never measured it. And you can ask some questions, and then he comes back on and he brings you back up. And so eventually, after doing this a number of times, you won't need that anymore. You'll know how to do it yourself. But it's a nice place to
That's
start for
great.
beginners.
And when you're channeling, because I know throughout your books you mention certain beings that you're channeling or that you receive information from. Is it sometimes more beings than one? Does it change? Is it your angels? Is it your higher self? Or what is your experience typically like?
Okay. When I do these in the middle of Saturday night um, uh, sessions, I start off by asking to talk to Gaia, soul of the earth, and I'll ask her earth questions. Then I'll switch to, sometimes I switch to creator, because creator tells me, Tom, he said, I can have trillions of conversations going on all at the same time. All you have to do once you are in your meditative state is just ask to speak to me. Now I call him creator because I think the word God is sort of limiting, because like in the Bible it says, and God created the earth and the heavens. Well, it doesn't exactly say anything about the universe. And so people can, I think, misinterpret that. And so I think creator is much closer to what he is, because he has created a universe with trillions of galaxies, and every single one of those trillions of galaxies are different from each other. So I mean, that's just amazing. So that's and then I'll speak to my guardian angel, who I named Theo, when he because I said, guardian angel, what name shall I call it? He said, oh, Tom, he said, humans don't have the vocal cords to pronounce angelic names. So he said, you can call me Tom, Dick, or Harry, but since your name is Tom, Tom will be a little difficult for you in your meditations. He
Yeah.
jokes with me, so he really is a fun kind of golden light being. Their guardian angels are actually super ancient whole souls that over millions of years have raised their vibrations to the point where they glow a golden light. And so they're called golden light beings. And they actually prefer the name servants of the Creator. So Theo was the very first golden light being out of a little over 1 million that volunteered. And so he saw this soul that was going to have one of its soul fragments have 1,300 lives on Earth. And so he chose my soul in the soul cluster to take care of for all of our lives on Earth
What does our soul
that are all going on at the
Yeah,
same
what
time.
does our soul family typically look like? Is it made up of just one guardian angel? Do we have a team that's working together? Do they change throughout our lifetime?
Okay. First of all, our souls volunteered for what's called the Earth experiment. So each of our souls has 6 to 12 fragments of itself that are having, on average, 600 to 800 lives on Earth. And then at the same time, our souls are having 500,000 to 1 million lives going on across the universe to learn about the universe, because one day in the future, the souls that volunteered for the Earth experiment are going to meld together several million years from now. And we're going to become a creator, and we will take over running this universe for this creator, allowing this creator, who's considered one of the top 5, according to Theo, one of the top 5 creators out of trillions of creators. And our creator will go up to like the 32nd or 34th level. And there's only like 5 other creators on that level. And our creator is already talking to one of them. So this is something for the far future. In the meantime, our souls agreed to have these lives on Earth in the 4 negative energies, which have never been worked with before in any of the trillions of other universes. And because our universe and the rest of the universes were all created in the 10 positive energies. Okay, so sorry
No,
I went off on
it's
a
really interesting. And
tangent.
when you were first given this information in writing your first book, what did you make of this information? If you want to touch a little bit on the gentle way and what an MBO is, what a
And what?
most benevolent outcome is.
Okay. Um, a benevolent outcome, when you request these out loud. You say, I request a most benevolent outcome for. They're specifically for you. And then I say thank you at the end, because I didn't at the very, very start, but so many things happened that were just magical and just amazing. I just had to start saying thank you. And so I recommend that you do the same. I mean, you don't have to, uh, but your guardian angel is going to do the work for you no matter what. And so these uh, requests are specifically for you, and they must be benevolent for everyone that is any way involved in the request. So, as an example, if you if a soldier requested an MBO to kill the enemy soldier before he was killed, that won't work. But if you say, I request a most benevolent outcome to return from this patrol safely, then something will happen that enemy of his will go off to eat lunch or dinner or something or whatever. So it has to be benevolent for everyone that is involved in the request. Now, when you start requesting benevolent outcomes for other people or pets, you name it, nations even, whatever, those are called benevolent prayers. And in my first book, The Gentle Way 1, I called them living prayers, but I found that was all over the map. And so in my second, The Gentle Way 2 book, I changed it to, I ask any and all beings to blank, 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 thank you. And those are the ones. And there is a separate group of what we call angels, they're souls, that actually handle all the prayers on earth. There's about 1 million of these. I asked Theo, I said, well, are they golden light beings too? And he said, no, they're just younger souls, but he says they're eager. That's the way you put it. So, so they handle all these requests. And, but when you say these things out loud, scientists in the future will rediscover the power of the verbal voice. And as an example, the pyramids of Giza, one or more, probably all, um, were built because they had at least 3 groups of like 300 men, women, and children that would say a chant that was given to them by the ETs, and it would raise these huge bags of cement up. They would be moved into place, poured into place, and hardened, and that became the limestone rocks or whatever they are.
Yeah, and I find that really interesting
Built
too,
there.
just the power of the voice and the importance that you mentioned of saying it out loud. Similar to like a
Yeah.
prayer or a mantra or singing, just kind of like the power of the voice. Also something else too, it said, I remembered in your book that it can be in writing also. In
To
writing, like
what?
if you write it out, does that still give power?
Well, yeah. If some people are not able to speak for whatever medical reason, so the other way they can do it is in writing, but it probably isn't quite as good as saying it out loud. Uh, but there has to be something for them, and that's what I was told to pass
Also,
along.
you mentioned a few times that we should be asking for the impossible. Why do you think that that's important?
Because you don't know what what impossible may be possible, and when you request these benevolent outcomes, um, your guardian angel looks at your soul contract. And so if you can imagine a soul contract being like a football field, with boundaries in either way. If the request is within these boundaries, you'll get it. But if you request something that's not on your soul contract, probably there's something better on the way, or there's a reason. So, as one example, I a friend of mine who lives in Paris, or lived in Paris until he passed away in the last year or so. Um, uh, he had gotten the book rights to a series of spy novels from World War II. That's easy enough for some people to say. Uh, by a writer by the name of Cheney, and so um, and so for a couple of years, he and I worked to try and put together the money to do a series of lower budgeted spy films about World War II. I went everywhere. I went, I was in Budapest and Paris and Cannes and St. Petersburg, Russia, and Los Angeles, and you name it, trying to raise this money. And every time I would get close, things would just fall apart for the weirdest reasons. So finally, I asked Theo one day. I said, Theo, why is this? Um, why is this happening? And because I'm requesting benevolent outcomes, he said, Tom, he said, had you gone down that path, you would not reach the number of people that you're going to reach with your books and newsletters and speaking and what have you. And so I said, oh, okay. And I just
The
gave
universe
up.
had a different
I said,
plan
that's not
for
for
you.
me. Different plan. Was not on my solo contract.
If someone's starting out with requesting MBOs and just communicating with their angels, you mentioned maybe asking for a parking spot. Is there anything else that people should ask for or tend to ask for when they're just beginning?
Oh, well, drives to work. Um, uh, at work, well, let's say you're a real estate agent, or even a server in a restaurant. You can request a benevolent outcome for your sales for each day to be even better than you can hope for or expect. And uh, and you'll find that you'll get people uh, sitting at a table that you take care of, or that walk in the door of the real estate office, and it's your turn to help them. That that will provide you with a income better than you hoped for or expected. So I mean, those are some of the things. You can also request. Now this gets into stuff. Keep in mind, some of these things you have to release. You request the benevolent outcome, and then you release it. So as an example, you can request a most benevolent outcome for the perfect job for you. But then you've got to kind of sit back and let things start to happen, because there may be a person in that job and they have to be promoted or leave that job for whatever reason. And uh, or maybe you have to have a interim job that will set you up for that perfect job. So you've got to be patient with that. The same thing if you request a most benevolent outcome um, uh, for the perfect mate for you. And I've even had a couple of women in the past email me and say, "Hey Tom, it's been a month and nothing's happening yet." So you have to understand that that maybe that perfect person is in another relationship. Maybe you need a relationship in between to prepare you for that perfect relationship. So when you request a benevolent outcome for that perfect person, you've got to be patient. Same thing with requesting the perfect home for you. And um, my wife and I used to live in a very expensive part of the Park Cities neighborhood of Dallas, and we decided we wanted to downsize. And so she started looking for houses, and she would take me out of work and say, "Let's go look at this house." We even made an offer on one, and some guy paid the full amount. And at that time period, people were not paying full amounts for houses, and so it uh, it is I I kept requesting a benevolent outcome each time we would do that. I'd even say we even made an offer, and I'd say, okay, I request a benevolent outcome for them to take our offer. Nothing happened. Finally, one day I said, okay, I request the most benevolent outcome for the perfect house home for us. The next day, my
Wow.
wife found it.
So it is on the universe's timing.
It's
And
on
something
the
else too
universe's
is when
time.
you have lost something. I remember you mentioned that too.
Well, people lose things all the time. One of the good ones to keep in mind: if you wear glasses, you say, "I request the most benevolent outcome to never misplacing my glasses again." So you kind of put that out in front so you don't. And people lose car keys. People lose. Um, I had a lady that just sent me um, a benevolent outcome story for my blog and for the newsletter, which I have a free newsletter I will mention real quickly, um, that you can subscribe to by going to my website, www.thegentlewaybook.com. On the front page, you can sign up for the newsletter. And so she sent me an MBO story where she could not find her birth certificate and social security card. Huh. And so she finally requested a benevolent outcome to find it. And she had this little whisper in her ear, "It's in the bedroom." She looked all over the bedroom, could not find it. Finally, she went upstairs to the upstairs bedroom and immediately found
Wow.
the documents. So she said, "I learned then you've got to be really specific. Which bedroom is this going to be in?"
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking of lately whenever I lose something. That's the first thing I've been doing is requesting a most benevolent outcome. And also,
Yeah,
when you're requesting a most benevolent outcome, you said that for other people, that it's more of a benevolent prayer, or you renamed it the benevolent. Um, what did you, the other, if you're requesting it for someone else, a benevolent outcome?
yeah. You say, "I ask any and all beings to uh, help uh, my sister-in-law Mary to get well, recover from her operation um, even faster than we can hope for or
And just
expect.
the wording
Thank
is
you."
a little bit
So
different.
you can, yeah, but keep in mind, I mean, these are things that I made up that I thought would ever fit all circumstances. I mean, you don't have to do it exactly like I do, but I found that if there's this common way to say something, you don't have to think like I did in the first book with these living prayers. Well, let's see, how do I say a living prayer for this circumstance? What living prayer do I say for that circumstance? So the way I finally designed these was for everyone to be able to um, not have to think very much in
I do
using them.
like how in depth in your book it is, just giving all of the different examples of times to use it. So that is really helpful. And then also the radiant
Yeah,
effect that you could be affecting other people positively too through your outcomes.
sure. And before I get on the radiant effect, um, my Gentle Way 3 is filled with nothing but story after story after story, hundreds of stories that people sent in to me about their benevolent outcomes. They're all divided into chapters, like a chapter for work, a chapter for home,
Do you have
and
any
so on and so
favorite
forth.
stories
So,
that you'd like to share that have stuck with you, whether it was for you or someone else?
yeah, let's go back to radiant effect real quick, and then I'll do that for you. Um, the um, the radiant effect sort of happens when, let's say, you're driving, and maybe there's people in the car with you, or maybe it's very heavy traffic, and there's cars in front of you and beside you, behind you. Um, I I think that the radiant effect basically, when you request a benevolent outcome for your drive, it extends to the people in the car and the people around you, uh, so that they don't cause you to be in a wreck. So that to me is like a radiant effect, uh, when you're saying something for yourself, it helps other people. Now, as far as what
Some examples
were
that
you
have
gonna?
stuck with you of benevolent outcomes, whether it was for you or someone else, any stories that have stuck with you?
Um, Keep in mind, benevolent outcomes can assist you when you're in mortal danger. So, as an example, one lady emailed to say that she had recently moved to Kansas to a farm, and suddenly there was a tornado bearing down on their house. And so she grabbed the kids, ran for the basement, requested benevolent outcome for their safety, and the tornado lifted up and went right over their house. Um, I had slightly similar, um, where we live in Plano, Texas, is known for having possible tornadoes at times. And there was this funnel, or this circular cloud that the funnels drop out of, and it it had started in the mid cities and slowly but surely was headed right in our direction, to the point where on TV they even named the boulevard that's about 4 blocks away from our house. And so both my wife and I requested benevolent outcomes for the safety of ourselves and our house. And within 2 minutes, the circular cloud completely dissipated. So then uh, there have been uh, other times um, let's see, uh, I was I had rented a car in Nice, France, uh, and I loaded these two big trunks plus my bag and all in the car, and I requested benevolent outcome for my drive from Nice to Cannes for a TV market, and uh, about halfway over to Cannes, a little French car zoomed past me, lost control, hit the median of the freeway, and bounced back right in front of me. And it was far enough ahead that I was able to, I didn't even have to slam on the brakes, just slowly reduced the brakes and moved around him. He wasn't injured, but not speaking French fluently. There were people that would help him a lot better than I could. So that was one time. Another time, I was driving back um, to home to on the North Dallas Freeway, and I just exited on Legacy Boulevard, which eventually leads towards my home. And I was following a pickup truck, and a lady coming the other direction decided to turn right in front of him, and he T-boned her, lifted the whole car up off the pavement, and the car turned 180 degrees, and I was slamming on my brakes, and I came within 6 feet of hitting the side of the driver's side of her car. So I was able to slowly move out of the way because there were people coming from all directions to assist, and I was just in the way. So that's, there are a lot of a lot of times that requesting benevolent outcomes for your drive, you never know what what it's
In
going to bring for
communicating
you.
with any of your angels, or through your meditations and channeling, have you had any explanation of kind of near death experiences or different things like that? Have they shared any?
I don't that I remember. I've had congestive heart failure, and oh, and well, in Cannes, um, this was not a near death experience, but in the middle of a TV market, I had diverticulitis, which is bleeding from your colon. I lost 40% of my blood, and and so I, needless to say, I was requesting a benevolent outcome. They sent me to an emergency room, and the intern doctor that was on the staff there said, "Well, when you get home, go see your doctor." So, uh, you know, but I was able to get back home, and and uh, when I had my congestive heart failure back in 2006, I think it was the first time. I It was a little touch and go, and certainly requested benevolent outcome for the surgeon to do his job perfectly, anesthesiologist to do his job perfectly, staff to do theirs, and for me to recover even sooner than I can hope for. So there are many times that you have serious things going on, and these benevolent outcomes just really help. And I've even gone into this was on another time with congestive heart failure for another ablation. And I said, don't put me under until I've said a prayer, uh, at the operating table. So they wheeled me under. Wheeled me to the operating room, transferred me to the table. And so I said, okay, I said the prayer, I ask any and all beings to aid and assist in the surgeon doing his work properly, anesthesiologist, staff, et cetera, et cetera. And, thank you. And I said, okay, and you can put me under now. One of the nurses said, I really like that
Oh,
prayer.
wow.
So
Yeah.
that's how that
Like you
goes.
said, you affected more people than just yourself. You really, the whole scene, everyone involved. And I'm sure the
Yeah.
more that you request this, you kind of build this relationship with your angels and your guides and things, and your trust deepens as well, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, trust demons. I mean, they're there for you. You may not know it, but they're there. And and they would love to help you in any way they possibly can. You just have to ask for it and do it benevolently, knowing that you have a soul contract. And if the soul contract says that you have to have an experience when you request a benevolent outcome, you can uh, it you still have a challenge, but it's not as severe. Instead of being a brick wall that you have to climb over, it becomes a huge speed bump. So it's an easier
It's like
experience to
someone's
get
holding your
past.
hand through the tough times. I've always been interested in bending time. If you want to share a little bit about that and maybe the rules of how that works.
Right. You can bend time or compress time. Um, if you have a meeting that you're supposed to be at, let's say it normally takes 30 minutes to get there and it's already 15 till or something like that. You can say, I request a compression of time until 2 p.m. if that's when the meeting is. And then you drive. When you drive, you don't look at your watch, don't look at the clock, anything that will tell you what the time is. And you will find that you've compressed time and you get there even maybe 1 or 2 minutes early. So, and you can do that even, if you have a report that's due, and you're on a deadline, you can request a compression of time so that
It's
you
really
can get it
amazing
done.
how it works too. I've tried it a few times.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's really something.
it works. Yeah. So that's one of the tools they've given us. I'm kind of, I don't know exactly how it works, but
Yeah,
I
as
don't
long as it
care.
works, and we have all these
It
tools at our
works.
disposal that you're sharing with us that we could use every day. Now, throughout your channeling and as you're writing your books, when did you first? I want to shift gears a little bit because I'm really interested in this topic too. When did you first discover some information on ancient civilizations? On
On
ancient
what?
civilizations, on Lemuria and Atlantis.
Oh,
How did that come to be?
yeah. Well, one day was in one of these sessions, and I said, uh, Theo, I think it was Theo, could have been Guy, but I think it was probably Theo. I said, Theo, have I ever had a life during Atlantean times? And he said, oh yes, Tom. He said, you've had quite a number. I was to find out it was like 180 lives during Atlantean times. And he said, 12,700 years ago, you uh, were inspired to create the general way, and you had 1 million followers, and it basically was on mostly Poseidon, but you had to migrate from Poseidon, from the Atlantean islands that were left after the first major uh, uh, destruction of the continent. And I and 25,000 of my followers uh, migrated through Europe, what's Europe now, to Egypt. And when we arrived in Egypt, they were scared that we were there to subjugate them again because in the past they had been subjugated by the Atlanteans. And I told them there was this, I told them that we were peaceful people. We were just there to live and find a place to live. And there was this Egyptian princess that helped us settle, and she's my wife in this life. So in her next life, she's going to go back about 12,600 years or so ago, and she's going to be one of the early pharaohs that they don't like to talk about because, of course, of their religious beliefs. And I'm going to be her assistant, but it's a past life for me. I've already had that one, but I will be his assistant and will assist him in governing uh, that part of Egypt or all of Egypt. I don't know. So anyway, that's one of the kind of
So not only
future
not
things.
only did you
And
share
so
all this information in this life, but back in Atlantean times, you shared all of this information as well.
yeah. So then uh, naturally, I had to finally ask at some point, well, did I ever have a life in Lemuria, on Lemuria, Mu? And oh, Tom, it's the way it kind of started out. Um, uh, you you helped sink Lemuria. It was considered the worst life I ever had on Earth. Took it took me 85 lives, I think, something like that, to balance that one life. I was a religious leader that encouraged the leaders of my country on the continent of Lemuria to uh, bomb using. We had sort of like hydrogen type bombs, and to bomb a couple of other countries, thinking that they didn't have a way to respond. They did, and so by the end of it, the whole continent uh, was destroyed, and I had to spend 85 lives balancing that one life.
Wow. Yeah. Now, can you tell me a little?
So
Sorry, go
sometimes
ahead.
you don't want to ask the question.
I guess we all have our karma that we have to balance out from one life or another.
Yeah. Oh, we
Can you
do.
tell me a little bit about Lemuria and then a little bit about Atlantis and maybe compare and contrast how they're different?
Um, they were quite different. I had, as I told you, I had around 180 lives in Atlantis, but I only had 65 lives on Lemuria. And I said, well, why is that? And I was told, well, down into the last 1,000 years of Lemuria, they were a very idyllic people, very peaceful. And only in the last 1,000 years did they start warring with each other. Where the Atlanteans, they were wanting to kind of take over the whole Mediterranean, and they basically were able to take over almost every place except for um, the Atlantean continent came within 30 miles of what we know as Africa, but at that time it was called the Land of Oz, which I thought was really interesting. So I was told that I actually had two separate lives, where I was a soldier, and we were sent over to Africa to subjugate the Land of Oz people, and we were completely wiped out each time because these um, uh, these flying machines and all that we had uh, used crystal power, and they could not operate at night. And so that was our Achilles heel. So, 2 or 3 thousand Maasai type warriors would come and just completely kill every single soldier that had come over.
In Atlantis, it was located in what is now like the Atlantic Ocean, and it took up a large chunk of it, right?
Yes, it did. It it was in the shape of a parallelogram, and uh, the the top portion of the continent was around the 40th parallel, and and there was a tail that from the continent that extended all the way down to the Bahamas, which is why you've heard about the Bimini Road and things like that. Um, so it had several million people living on it. 30,000 years ago, there was a line of volcanoes sitting right on top of the mid-Atlantic ridge, and they all exploded at the same time and sinking most of the continent except for some islands here and there. And and the oceans of the world rose 160 feet. Then 12,500 years ago, year 100 or 200 years after my group and I left, they had a war. It was sort of like a Pearl Harbor, where the sons of Belial that inhabited Aaron and five little small islands below that came uh, the 375 miles they flew in their machines, and with giant laser guns that would melt the ground you were on, and started destroying all of Poseidon, which was the size of Cuba but round in shape. And it they thought uh, they knew where all the airfields were, but they didn't. And so the Poseidons responded, and by the time it was over, all those islands sank, and the oceans of the world rose 45 feet, and that was actually when Noah's Ark was lifted up and floated away. But of course, 45 feet doesn't cover the whole earth. And so that's why you'll read accounts that even wild animals were on board the ark, which they actually weren't, but somebody added that into the story over several thousand years. And they did land on the lower slopes of Mount Ararat. So that was that time. And then, of course, when Lemuria sank in being destroyed by the hydrogen type bomb, the oceans rose again 170 feet. So there's been a lot of water that
Are there any
came.
remnants of either ancient civilization today that still exist?
I sort of leave that for other people that
Yeah, because
want
I've always been
to
intrigued just
search,
through
because
reading through your work and other people's work, whether it was, the Florida Keys or certain places in Nova Scotia or even the Pacific. So I've always just been intrigued on that. And then something else that I find to be really interesting is just how different not only these two cultures were, but the technologies that they had that no longer exist at this time. If you could talk a little bit about the
yeah.
technologies that existed.
Well, the Atlanteans were given free energy uh, using crystals, and they had what are called giant posers, which were crystals that were 25 feet tall or so, and they would put out a sort of a signal like a radio signal, and so because it was a signal like a radio signal, it uh, it only would go like with the curvature of the Earth. So they had to have posers every few miles to operate all their factories and their apartments and homes and cars and airplanes and so on. All relied on this free energy. But then, of course, they turned it into weapons of war with these lasers, and that was not good. The Lemurians were given free energy too, of a different type, which I've not been able to identify. And again, they turned that into weapons of war. And so that's when the Earth Directive came along, saying, uh, you know, no ET civilization is to give them any help. They will live or die at their own hand. And that's why, even though there's this Earth experiment that Creator created with uh, for us living in these four negative energies, um, uh, we uh, we're not to receive any major help from the ETs. They're only here taking millions of readings each day from somewhere around 24, 25 motherships that are above us, and they send out these drones and scout craft and take these millions of readings every single day above the earth, in the oceans, you name it, as part of Creator's Earth.
Yeah, and I found it interesting, even certain places in the United States where they had said that they had found crystals, such as places in Arkansas or even Hawaii and things like that.
Well, the when the Atlanteans, when the continent sank, they had to go find crystals elsewhere, and that's exactly, they had a mining colony uh, uh, to the west of Hot Springs, and they would, about 600 people, men, women, and children, would live in these temporary mining colonies, and they would work an area, then uh, tear down the the mining buildings or whatever, and they would move to a different area, set it up again, and mine that particular area. And then they would transport these crystals back to Poseidon and Aaron.
And one of the other standouts from the civilizations and things that they had was specifically Lemuria, the healing centers, and just the different ways that they had to heal themselves that we don't. What was
Yes,
the healing center typically
all
like,
lost.
or what have you discovered um, about it?
Sound and light heal. We're on the edge. I was told by Guy, I think, that um, that the Atlanteans and all were still ahead of us in healing, and because we have relied so long on pills, injections, and things like that. But there'll come a time when we'll have our own healing
Yeah, it sounds
centers.
quite miraculous. People that can go there and really just with simple things, that we take for granted every day with these technologies to really help to heal one another. Yes. And just to kind of wrap that up, you mentioned a few of the major destructions that really destroyed these civilizations in time. Was there any projection of things to come in the future, of any future events similar to that?
Well, of course, yeah, next year, this will be in my new book. Actually, my new book is now two books because it's called Conversations with Gaia, Soul of the Earth, volumes 1 and 2. And I have a whole chapter on 2026. So Gaia has said that this year she's going to start having more earthquakes on the West Coast. That's already happening. April 10th, I think it was, there was a 5.2 earthquake in Southern California and 300 earthquakes after that, 3.0 and higher. So she said that this year she will have more earthquakes, but there will be a maximum of 5 to 5.3. Then, starting next year, in the early months of, of 2026, she's going to start having what she calls precursor quakes. And these will be mini quakes with a maximum of 6 to 6.5 in magnitude. That's for those that don't believe what they're hearing right now. That's your signal that you got to leave the West Coast because that summer are going to come the 7s, 8s, and 9s all up and down the West Coast from Tijuana all the way up through the Aleutians. And it will make the whole West Coast uninhabitable um, because these will not just be one earthquake and then a few small ones. It'll be a 7 and then an 8 and then maybe a 9 and then back to an 8 over weeks and months. There will be no electricity, no water, no sewage. There will be liquefaction if people want to look up that term. It's going to be a real mess. And in my book, I gave 5 options of what you can do, and choosing with doing absolutely nothing until the precursors come in the early months of 2026. But if you don't do something after that, it could be that your soul contract is you're supposed to, you know, possibly die in one of those things. There's going to be tsunamis that are going to be multiple tsunamis that are going to be created that will go across and destroy a lot of Hawaii and Japan and Asia and even as far down as the east coast of Australia. Gaia says this has never been seen in modern times. That's the way she
Is there
describes
a greater meaning to this that they're giving? The guy is communicating to you something big picture for all of these destructions?
it. I was told that all souls or soul fragments have to have experienced everything that Earth has to offer by the time we're through with those 600 to 800 lives on average. Many young souls have never experienced earthquakes or volcano eruptions because uh, the Yellowstone supervolcano is also going to erupt. That's going to be a real mess. And so uh, that's so many of these young souls have not had these experiences, and this is how they're going to get the experience.
In talking about your new book, is there anything else that kind of came forward? If you want to highlight your new 2 books and when they come out, and kind of how this is different from your previous books.
Well, um, I've asked, as I've mentioned before, I've asked over 30,000 questions in a meditative state. So my co-writer, I call her co-writer because she was the person that compiled all of these messages or questions that I had with Gaia going back years. And uh, that's why we had to split it into two books, because it was going to be over 650 pages. But I have many questions I ask her about space and just so many different topics that have been put together. So this book will be coming out supposedly in 30 to 60 days. I know I was just talking to my um, publisher last night, and she showed me that she's already got volume 1 and volume 2 on the book already, and we're getting really close to the point where it's going to be released to the general public. And it's my understanding a print version of each volume is going to be $18.95, and the digital version will be $9.95 or $9.99, whatever they do that. So that reasonable prices for somebody to learn a lot about a whole
Yeah,
lot of
especially
different
even
things.
with your book on Atlantis and Lemuria. I just love how in depth everything was and how detailed really each chapter
Yeah.
was. And Tom,
Well, it was even more detailed. Actually, it took me weeks to do it, but I got the latitudes and longitudes for both continents. But the publisher at that time and the editors didn't understand it, so they left it out of the book. I was
yeah,
not
because it
happy.
was really spot on with the amount of information. I really loved that. And Tom, do you have any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to share, just big picture, to kind of wrap up our conversation today?
I would encourage people to do 2 or 3 things. Number one, of course, I have this free weekly newsletter that you can go to www.thegentleWayBook.com, and on the front page there's a little box, and you just enter your email address and name and send, and then you'll get an email back saying, "Is this you? Did you really do this?" And so you'll start receiving my newsletters every week. And also for the people that might listen that are on the West Coast or have family or friends on the West Coast, um, if you, I've been told that there's going to be guardian angels that are going to really push people that are supposed to experience this event to not believe it, that it's going to happen. But there's on YouTube, there is it's called the Earth Master, and it's a guy that analyzes earthquakes all around the world every day. He's more neutral. You can look at it as more neutral than me, and I I probably should ask him for a uh, uh, something on the side, but I'm not. Uh, so you can look at those and see what's happening. And he's really concerned. He thinks all this pressure down in Southern California is leading to an 8.1. That's what he's guessing. But he tends to think it could happen this year, but it's not. It's going to be
Yeah,
next
because
year.
I'm in Los Angeles, and I was driving through Riverside County, which is closer to San Diego, when they had the earthquake the other day and sent the alert out. So it's important to be prepared and, like you said, just be aware.
And bail out. You know, when you get the book, read read uh, the 5 options I give everyone, and you should think seriously.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. And did you want to share any other websites or any information of how people can find you and contact you?
Well, in my newsletter, if you want to ask a question, it
Okay,
tells you how
perfect.
to
Well,
do so.
thank you so much for chatting today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim, and good luck. I ask any all beings to aid and assist and protect you and guide you to leave when it's time.
Thank you. And I just stopped the recording. If you could hang on just for one